Now, victims of the infamous Facebook rapist Thabo Bester continue to come forward after his daring prison escape was acknowledged by authorities. As police continue their frantic search for the fugitive, senior reporter Silindelo Masikane is taking a closer look at how the man who was believed to have died and buried is alive and not in jail. Well, let's go to her now and just find out where she's at and what has she been finding out. Good afternoon, Silindelo. Welcome to today. So, any more light shed on this whole Thabo Bester saga? Do we know about the internal probe? Do we have anything there?
Well, the story just seems to be growing more legs, Bradan. As bizarre as it is, of course, it's exposing many of the deficiencies within our justice system, perhaps in particular, perhaps the oversight when it comes to these private-public facilities, correctional facilities that are contracted by DCS in order to house inmates. Now, we know that in particular with this Thabo Bester saga, he was being housed at the Mangaung prison in Bloemfontein, and that particular prison is essentially a private prison because it's run by a private security company called G4S. They were awarded the contract to build the facility, to run the facility. It's staffed by G4S in particular, and of course there was that fire in which a man died in a cell, a release then coming out saying that it was Thabo Bester who had died in that particular fire, but then reports started circulating, pictures started circulating on social media where it seemed people were spotting him in public places just after that fire in Mangaung. So what we understand now, of course, following the confirmation by correctional services over the weekend that in fact Thabo Bester, following some DNA tests on the body that was found in that particular cell, we know now that correctional services admits that in fact it was not Thabo Bester who died in that fire, which of course then gives rise to the reports around where was Thabo Bester then living, or what kind of a life was he living after his escape. Now, we've managed to locate the mansion in which we understand Thabo Bester as well as his girlfriend resided in Hyde Park. It's a multi-million rand mansion, brother, and I'm going to ask Tammy perhaps to walk with me. Unfortunately, we don't have access inside at the moment, but there are to-let signs, meaning that the property is available for anybody who wants to come and purchase it, rent it out, to buy it. And from what we understand from an article from Sunday Times, Bradan, around this particular mansion, it seems that it's actually one of several properties in which Bester as well as his girlfriend were renting out. We understand Bester was using a different name to rent out this particular property. What's also understood is that the couple made around 1.8 million rands worth of unauthorized alterations allegedly to this particular property. They apparently also owned about 2 Porsches. They wore the latest fashions and were paying around 175,000 rand a month for these particular properties. So this is just one of several properties we understand that belong to Bester as well as his girlfriend. What we also know now from speaking to DCS is that there seems to be what I would like to what I would deem a dispute, essentially. So we do have that investigation by DCS that found that the man who died in the cell was not Bester, but G4S security seems to be disputing this, and so the investigations internally into the probe as to what happened there are a bit stalled, because G4S seems to insist that the man who died in that cell actually is Bester. Let's take a listen.
As correctional services, we are now engaging with the second leg in terms of what does the contract say when it comes to an escape? But number 2, the security breaches that we have identified. Unfortunately, there is no common ground. We don't seem to find each other with the contractor in terms of our findings and what they think to be their findings. And that's where we are right now. It's a matter that needs to be resolved so that we can move forward in terms of how do we then proceed with the working relationship that we have with the contractor.
If my understanding is correct, then is the contractor then disputing that the body is not of Thabo Bester?
Yes, there are disagreements. They maintain that the inmate whom was allocated that particular cell is the one that died in that fire, and we are saying that is not the case.
That's very interesting, Silindelo. How would they know that's G4S if or not it was Thabo Bester? Because they need DNA evidence, which is pointing the other way. We'll have to wait and see how this plays out, Silindelo. But legally, who should be held responsible for this mess? It's a huge embarrassment.
From speaking to a legal expert, Bradan, essentially everyone who was part and parcel of this cover-up, of this escape, needs to be held accountable, needs to be charged. We know at the moment there are police investigations into a murder as well of an escape. We know that there's a manhunt for Bester at the moment, but in essence, everyone who was part and parcel of this elaborate cover-up needs to be held accountable. And of course, it's really raising eyebrows in terms of the trust of South Africans into the justice system. I mean, I think a lot of work, Bradan, goes into the prosecution phase of getting criminals convicted, and something like this obviously does not do good for the justice system in terms of housing inmates or ensuring that convicted criminals remain behind bars. Let's take a listen.
Firstly, we have to say that this person is lawfully incarcerated. So any attempt whilst you are lawfully incarcerated to try and break out or to get away somehow or with some means from the incarceration is of course unlawful. And by its very nature, if you break out of prison or if you escape, you are escaping from lawful custody. And that, of course, is an offense that normally carries direct imprisonment. And has to keep in mind, Slee, that this also applies to everybody that helps you. Because if I conspire with you and other prison wardens to work together to get me in an elaborate scheme to escape, well, then we are all conspiring so that I can escape from lawful custody. And of course, we are committing fraud because we are giving out and pretending that a body is me, whereas it's not me.
What more do we know, if anything, Silindelo, about police investigations into this matter?
I had an opportunity, Bradan, to speak to the police with regards to the investigations. You'd remember they released a statement yesterday telling us that detectives from the Free State as well as Gauteng were collaborating in terms of trying to track down and locate Thabo Bester. But the police are really trying to keep their cards very close to their chest. They're being mum around the information that they give us, but they're saying that investigations are at a critical stage, and they don't want to jeopardize the investigations by giving out too much information. And you would know, if you're on social media and following this particular story, that there are questions around the girlfriend or the partner of Thabo Bester, who is an alleged doctor, a female doctor, quite popular in fact on social media as well as in the general media as well. She does a lot of interviews across broadcasters, and it seems though that at the moment she can't be located. And so I posed it to the police whether they are aware of her whereabouts, and perhaps if they have questioned her or brought her in for questioning after that picture made the rounds where she was seen in Sandton at a particular retail store photographed with Thabo Bester. Let's take a listen.
So at this stage, we do not want to divulge much about the ongoing investigation. What we do want to assure the nation, the victims, survivors, and affected families is that the SAPS has established a dedicated team consisting of members from Gauteng and Free State that are working jointly together. This team in particular is led by our Organized Crime Investigations Unit. They are working on the case. They've been working on this particular case for quite some time. And also take this opportunity to thank members of the public who continue to come forward with information on this particular syndicate, on this particular fugitive, and everyone that is involved in this particular crime. So yes, we are monitoring the social media space. We are monitoring all platforms where people are sharing information on this particular fugitive and his accomplices. And as the police, we are on the ground. Our team is following up on all leads.
Thank you very much, Silindelo Masikane, on that update about the Thabo Bester saga.